Talofa lava, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific. I'm Susana Suisuki. Coming up,
he leaves behind a legacy of faith, service and compassion for all.
The world mourns the death of Pope Francis. Also,
this is our privilege also because of Pope Francis. We have the first cardinal in the person of Cardinal John Drua.
Pacific cardinals will travel to Rome, and some mixed results for Fijian Drua and Moana Pasifika. Mourners have been gathering in St. Peter's Square at the Vatican to pay their respects to Pope Francis, who has died at the age of 88. Many have been expressing shock at the death of the pontiff, whom they had seen in the square just the day before. Francis had toured the square and blessed babies in an open-air Pope-mobile on Easter Sunday and made an appearance on the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica while an aide read out his Easter message expressing a wish for peace. World leaders have praised Pope Francis, the first Latin American leader of the Catholic Church. World Watch's Andrew McRae has more.
King Charles says Pope Francis was tireless in his commitment to the common causes of all people of faith. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. from the Philippines says he led not only with wisdom, but also with a heart open to all, especially the poor and forgotten. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he knew how to give hope and foster unity. And France's Emmanuel Macron says the Pope always sided with the most vulnerable and most fragile. The Secretary-General of the UN, Antonio Guterres, described the Pope as a messenger of hope, humility and humanity.
He leaves behind a legacy of faith, service and compassion for all, especially those on the margins of life or trapped by the horrors of conflict. Pope Francis also understood that protecting our common home is at heart a deeply moral mission, a responsibility that belongs to every person.
Former US President Barack Obama says Pope Francis was the real leader who made us want to be better people. President Donald Trump says he'll attend the funeral, which is expected to draw dozens of other world leaders to Rome. The date's yet to be decided.
Two cardinals will be representing Pacific Island countries at the Papal Conclave in Rome to elect a new pope. Pope Francis died on Monday after a stroke. The pair representing the Pacific are Cardinal Mafi of Tonga and Cardinal Rebats of Papua New Guinea. Koroi Hawkins spoke with the Bishop of Lay in Papua New Guinea, Rosario Menezes, who says Pope Francis has done a lot for the Church in PNG.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for asking. Thank you for your condolences. When we heard the news yesterday, we were very saddened, shocked, because we heard that the doctors had told that he was not in danger of death. So we did not expect the Holy Father to pass away suddenly like this. But we are certainly sad. We find it hard to accept that we are losing a leader who led the Church from his heart. But at the same time, we are very grateful to God for giving us a leader who was so concerned about the poor, so concerned about the peripheries, and he made, even in his sickness, he made great efforts to visit us last year in September, the 4 nations in the Asia-Pacific region. And his message to us was that God is closer to us. Even if we are very far from, we feel that we are very far, but God is very closer to us. So Pope Francis had Papua New Guinea in his heart. Many times we bishops, when we went to Rome, he always inquired about us. And especially during the time of COVID, even we not asking any help from Vatican, he himself sent, I think 2 or 3 times during COVID, the PPEs, face masks, hand sanitizers, and other medications which were necessary during the COVID, when we were suffering due to COVID. And every time there was a lack of medicine, the newspapers would report, and the Pope Francis would send some medicine through Nunciature to Papua New Guinea. So his gestures, his thought about Papua New Guinea, and his care for the peripheries, all this makes us feel sad that he is gone. He is no more the leader of the Church. But his legacy will live on. We follow his example, his simplicity, his sincerity and his down-to-earth approach. So we certainly miss that.
How have the congregation in Papua New Guinea taken the news?
Yeah, today I just saw both the newspapers, the National and the Post Courier. They have the front page stories, the photos and the stories, especially the photos of Pope Francis while he was here in September. And then since yesterday, we heard the news around 5:30, and then calls have been pouring in because few months ago when Pope Francis was in February when he was sick, there were lots of fake news in the social media. So we had to call a press conference to make it clear to the people that when Pope dies, there are protocols to follow, and we will get the news from the Vatican. So now yesterday, to make sure that it is true, there were many calls in the evenings and just to confirm that it is true. So people have been very much saddened, and the condolences are pouring in. People from all walks of life, especially government, business houses, they are calling us to say how sad they are to lose a man. We call him People's Pope, who had the humanity at his heart. So certainly we are very saddened. The whole Papua New Guinea is saddened. So we are dealing with this news. At the same time, we are also organizing prayer meetings, rosaries, and we are having on Friday a memorial mass also for Pope Francis, where the whole town will be invited.
I see on the list of cardinal electors, Cardinal Ribat is listed. Will Cardinal Ribat be traveling to the conclave?
Yes. We are organizing his travel to Rome. He will be, I think, traveling within these few days to be part of the conclave. This is our privilege also because of Pope Francis. We have the first cardinal in the person of Cardinal John Ribat. By appointing him as a cardinal, he has put the Catholic Church in PNG in the world map, giving us the confidence that even though we are a missionary church here, we can contribute a lot to the universal church. So we are very grateful for that gesture of confidence that he has shown to us. And at the same time, we are very proud that PNG can also be part of choosing the next leader of the Catholic Church.
His Holiness was described as a liberal pope, as you say, a people's pope. As they consider looking to the future of the church, do you have any idea of what is being talked about in terms of the leadership going forward?
Yes, it's true. Pope Francis was very liberal. He was a people's pope. But the very fact that he took the name Francis, Francis of Assisi, was very close to the nature, Laudato Si. He was very close to the poor, and so Pope Francis is really, his leadership was from the heart. So, and then about the future leadership, I always believe, this is my personal opinion, I always believe that the Pope is appointed by the Holy Spirit. The cardinals who will be gathered during the conclave, they will have a time of prayer and reflection, and it is the Spirit of God who would choose a leader to continue the work of the church. This church belongs to Christ, and he will make sure that he will inspire the cardinals to appoint someone who can lead. We might have different, everybody is different. Pope Francis, he had his own style. Maybe the next Pope, whomever they appoint, will have his own style to lead the church. So I am confident that God will inspire our cardinals to choose the right man for as the leader of the Catholic Church.
In the Pacific, I can only see, in the Pacific Island countries, I can only see Cardinal Mafi of Tonga as the only other person. Is that the correct understanding? Only Cardinal Mafi and Cardinal Ribat will be representing the island countries?
You're correct.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sparing your time. I appreciate your generosity and condolences again on this sad couple of days.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
God bless.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
While Papua New Guinea and Bougainville continue the mediation process over the region's desire for independence, Bougainville's leaders are separately laying down markers of what they're expecting. In recent weeks, Bougainville has taken the initiative, boldly stating they expect to be independent by 1 September 2027. It also expects the PNG Parliament to quickly ratify the referendum from 2019, in which an overwhelming percentage of Bougainvilleans supported independence. To learn more, Don Wiseman spoke with Australian National University academic Tiago Opperman, who has spent many years in both Bougainville and PNG.
We've had 5.5 years since the Bougainville referendum, but very suddenly in the last couple of months, it would seem that Bougainville is picking up pace and trying to really make some progress with this march towards independence as they see it. Are they overplaying their hand?
I don't believe that they are overplaying their hand. I think that the impression that is apparent of a sudden flurry of activity arises partly because for the first 2 years after the referendum, there was a very slow pace. One of the shortcomings of the Bougainville peace agreement was that it didn't set out a very clear post-referendum path. That part of the process, I think, was not as well designed as the parts leading to the referendum. And that left a great deal of uncertainty as to how to structure negotiations, how things should be conducted, and quite substantial differences in the views of the Papua New Guinean government and the ABG as to how the referendum result would be processed further. For instance, how would it need to be tabled in Parliament? What kind of vote would be required for it? Would a negotiation between the parties lead to an agreement that then is presented to the Parliament, and how would that negotiation work? All these areas, they were not prescriptive in the BPA. That led to a period of a good 2 years in which there was very slow process and then attempts to get some movement. And I would say that in that period, the views of the Bougainvilleans and the Papua New Guineans became quite entrenched in quite different camps, and something I think would have to give eventually. Why the Bougainvilleans have moved towards this point now, I think that it bears pointing out that there has been a long process that's been unfolding, I think, for more than 2 years now, of beginning the organic process of developing a Bougainvillean constitutional process with these constitutional development committees across the island doing a lot of work. And that has now borne fruit, is how I would describe it. It happens at a point where the process has, I guess, been unblocked by the appointment of Jerry Matapare, which I think sets a new vigor into the process, and it becomes it looks now like it's heading towards some form of outcome. And that being the case, the Bougainvilleans have made their position quite clear.
Well, Bougainville, in fact, is saying it will be independent by the 5th of September 2027. How likely do you think that is?
I think there's a question that comes before that. When Bougainville says that they will be independent by such a date, what we need to first consider is that the process of mediation is still unfolding. I think that the first thing to consider is what would that independence look like, and what scope is there within the mediation for finding some compromise that still suits Papua New Guinea. I think that there's a much greater range of outcomes than people realize within this sort of umbrella of independence. And the Bougainvilleans themselves, I think, have moved to a position of understanding independence in much more nuanced terms than previously. You might imagine that in the aftermath of this fairly brutal and bitter civil conflict, the idea of independence at that time was quite a radical cut towards full Bruklus, as they say. But the reality is that for many post-colonial and new states since World War II, there are many different kinds of independence. And the degree to which there remains a kind of attachment with or relationship with the so-called parent colonial country is variable. I should add, I don't want to digress too much, But this concept of the parent colonial country is something that I heard quite a lot of when I was studying the referendum itself. Many people would say that the relationship that they had to Papua New Guinea was not one of enmity or of like running away. It was more a question of there being a parent, and Bougainville having now grown up to the point where the child, Bougainville, is ready to go off and set up its own house. They thought of it, many people thought of it in those terms. Now, I think that in concrete terms, that can be articulated in many different ways when we think about international law and the status of different sovereign nations around the world.
If we can just look at some of the possibilities in terms of the way in which this independence might be interpreted. My understanding is that for Bougainville, it's vital that they have a degree of sovereignty that will allow them to join organizations like the United Nations, but
yes,
they're not necessarily looking to be fully independent of PNG.
Yes, I think that there would be like a process underway in Bougainville for understanding what that would look like. Okay, so there are certainly people who would have a view that is still more firmly towards full independence, so-called. And there'd be others who understand some time of free association arrangements or something that still retains a closer relationship with Papua New Guinea. I don't think many people have illusions that Bougainville could, for instance, suddenly break loose of the very deep economic connections it has with Papua New Guinea, not only those of government funding, but the commercial connections, which are very, very deep. So suddenly making that disappear, I think, is not something people believe is possible. But there are many other options that are on the table. I think what Bougainville is doing by having the announcement of the Independence Day is setting for Papua New Guinea, saying like, here is the terms of the debate that we are prepared to consider. But within that, there is still a great deal of giving and taking, I think.
The battle for the top 6 positions for the 2025 Super Rugby Pacific competition continues to produce interesting results. Round 10, held over the past weekend, saw the lead at the top of the point standing change again, with the Chiefs claiming a big 46-10 win over the Highlanders to reclaim top spot. There were also some movements at the bottom of the table, with Fijian Drua beating the Waratahs to reduce the gap between them and Moana Pasifika, who are 1 spot ahead of them. Our senior sports journalist Elisa Tora joins me in reviewing the 2 Pasifika teams and where they stand.
Hey, Bula Eliasa, the Fijian Drua desperately needed a win to keep their hopes of climbing up the competition ladder alive, and they did that in Lautoka against the Waratahs. How did they manage to get the win?
Yes, definitely. The pressure was on the Drua to win last Saturday's must-win game against the Waratahs in Lautoka, having lost 5 games in a row, including 1 at home in Suva earlier. And head coach Glenn Jackson had called for the team to put their acts together and try and get that win. And they did. They did that last weekend with a showing that definitely gave some hope for the team as they continue to search for a top 6 finish, and they were able to beat the Waratahs at home in Lautoka. When the game started, it was a bit of a disappointment for a lot of Drua fans because the crowd didn't fill up Lautoka's Churchill Park as they had previously. But in the end, they were able to beat the Waratahs. There was a lot of positives that were seen. They were able to put their forward drives together and managed to win the set pieces, especially the lineouts and the scrums. They were a bit more structured in their play, and in the end, towards the final whistle, they were also awarded a penalty try that basically gave them the win against the Waratahs. That was only their second win in the competition so far. with them having lost 9 earlier matches. But definitely puts them, also they're still at the bottom of the Super Rugby points table at the moment, that puts them in contention for at least trying to get into the top 6 if they win the rest of their games ahead of them.
Definitely a positive result for the Drua. Meanwhile, in Pukekohe, Moana Pasifika had a tough battle against the Brumbies. What happened there?
Yes, definitely a disappointment for Moana Pasifika. I know that head coach Falongotana Umanga had called for Moana Pasifika to start well and to be consistent throughout the 80 minutes, hoping that they would have recovered from the earlier loss to the Blues at Eden Park a weekend earlier. They managed to do that in the first 40 minutes. The Brumbies scored just before halftime and led 5-0. But the unfortunate thing for Moana, I would say, from that match was that they didn't take the opportunities to score points when they were inside the Brumbies 22-meter zone. They had 3 kickable penalties that if they had kicked, with Patrick Pellegrini having proven that he's a good goal kicker at the moment, his accuracy has been great. They would have taken a 9-0 lead going into the first half, but they turned that down, and they lost the opportunity. So, in the second half, the Brumbies scored 19 unanswered points, and they were able to claim that win. And the first time in the competition this year that Moana Pasifika were not able to score any points at all. There was disappointment from the captain of the day, Sione Havili Talitui, because he said, they gave away too many penalties in the second half, and they just lost focus of the game plan that they were supposed to have stuck to, and they lost the match in the end at Pukekohe.
What are some of the lessons the two teams could learn from their performances?
Definitely for Moana Pasifika, Falongotana Umanga said later at the post-match conference that one of the biggest learning was, making sure that they should get points every time they're in the opposition's 22. As I said, they turned down 3 kickable penalties. That would have changed the momentum of the game for them. And head coach Umanga said that was something that they will need to put into practice moving forward. There were missed opportunities for them also, and they had to defend overtime in the second half because they continued allowing the Brumbies to get into their 22 meters, and the Brumbies, basically just used their set pieces, meaning they worked hard with the mauls, they won their lineouts. And once they won their lineouts, they started driving mauls deep into the Moana Pasifika zone, and Moana Pasifika were not able to handle that. In the end, they lost out. On the other side of the coin, the Drua were able to convert those kickable penalties into points, and were able to have that advantage in the first half and also later in the second half. One of the positive things that we can see from both teams is now they are playing a lot of structured rugby and mixing that with poly-flair, or the Fijian flair, as they called it. That was prevalent in the two matches. Unfortunately, Moana were not able to turn those into points. One of the other things also that the teams could have learned from at the weekend was just the number of penalties that they gave away. Penalties in a lot of ways, and also lost possession, especially losing basics in turnover balls and knock-on. So hopefully they will be able to work on those this week. Interestingly, they will be going head-to-head later this weekend, so it'll be interesting to see if those learnings are something that they have taken on board as they go through this new week.
And just looking ahead, Elisa, how are the team's chances for securing top 6 finish now, with the competition getting into its final rounds of matches?
Well, there's a big gap between the Chiefs, who are leading the points table at 32 points, and the Fijian Drua at 11. And in between, you have the Crusaders and the Brumbies tied at second and third, and then Moana Pasifika is at 15 points at the 10th position, and Highlanders, the Blues, and the Hurricanes ahead of them. For them to be able to get into the top six at all, they will have to win the rest of their matches, which means one of them will forfeit points this weekend because they are meeting up in the 11th round. Moana Pasifika is hosting the Drua at North Harbour on Saturday afternoon. So whoever wins from those two will see a change in their standing. So if Moana Pasifika wins, they get the extra 4 points and they will be able to climb up the ladder again. But if Fijian Drua wins, they will get 4 points and tie with Moana, which will make their pathway up the ladder interesting. But for them, they will have to win the rest of their matches to be able to get into the top six at least. You got Waratahs and the Force, who are on fifth and sixth at the moment, and the Hurricanes are just behind them at seventh. So hopefully, if the two teams start winning, keep winning, and the teams up the ladder start losing matches, that will give them the opportunity to climb up. Otherwise, it's going to be a tough run for the top six, with the Chiefs and the Crusaders, plus the Brumbies of Australia, at least confirmed to get into the top six in the top 3 positions.
That's Pacific Waves for today. For all episodes, head over to rnz.co.nz/Pacific. We're also on Spotify, Apple and iHeartRadio. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, tō whā, sui fua.